listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with Skafy, Lindsay, and producer Tish. And now it is the time for a quiz question. So please, Tish.
All right. Which of the following is not listed in the works of the flesh in Galatians 5? And then there is none in the following, which is not exactly helpful.
No.
Okay.
Well,
let's go to the next one. All right.
Following the golden calf apostasy, which tribe executed the 3,000? Following the golden calf apostasy, which tribe executed 3,000? We have one correct answer and two correct answers in our studio. 0491064669. Please text us if you also know the answer. Following the golden calf apostasy, which tribe executed the 3,000?
Okay. Which tribe executed the 3,000 after the golden calf apostasy? If you do know the answer to that one, what's the number you should send a message to, Lindsay?
0491 064 669.
Okay, again, one more time, 0491 064 669. And what are we going to be talking about in our segments here, Lindsay?
We are going to be talking about a lost page from Archimedes' manuscript.
Okay, I want to talk something that has to do with Archimedes.
Okay.
But I'm going to talk about a startup company in California who wants to banish nighttime.
Oh, no. I think you were telling me a little bit about this yesterday, and I was like, this sounds like the worst.
That is going to be a very interesting story.
I'm glad it's in the bad news segment, not the good news segment.
We also will have an interview with Sam Bonello today. He is a financial advisor, and he is going to be talking to us a little bit about what to do in the current petrol crisis that we're having and how to save money in spite of raising costs and cost of living crisis. And also, have you ever wondered how come the petrol that is being shipped half a world away from us, how does it impact the prices of petrol and diesel all over the globe, including here in Australia? I mean, should it, how is that connection there? We're going to ask that to Sam Bonello and much more, so you stay tuned here. 7:35 is going to be our interview with him. Give it or take a couple of minutes. We are now going to move on to Lindsay's story. So, Lindsay, okay, tell me more about this story that you want to bring.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about
Archimedes.
Who
was he?
So he was a mathematician in the Greek world, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure. That would make sense considering So the story we're talking about today is a specific one page that has been lost over thousands of years and then has been refound, and it's come up in a French museum. And it's like, why is there this single page from a codex that was written by Archimedes?
Yes.
Like, why is that in a random French museum all by itself? And also what is on it is very interesting.
So how did it just showed up there?
So there's actually a whole long story. I'll have to read out the different steps in its journey that it's taken. So it's believed to have been written by the legendary Isidore of Miletus, who designed the original structure that became the Hagia Sophia, which is a church and then a mosque based in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul in Turkey. So that's where this thing started out. So it's got writings from Archimedes, but this was written by Isidore of Miletus.
Okay, which is this legendary architect.
Architect of this amazing church, mosque, building. And the parchment codex contained works of the classical Greek mathematician Archimedes and other people in this codex. So this compilation was later copied onto parchment in 950, then evacuated to a Greek Orthodox monastery in Palestine before the Crusader sack of Constantinople in 1204. Okay, so there's like a whole historical journey that.
So this paper is moving hands, changing hands. People are invading things. They're seeing beautiful things. Hey, this looks like interesting. I'm going to take it with me. So where did it end up going to? Do we know?
So it ended up in this Greek Orthodox monastery for 900 years, during which it was washed and reused for Greek religious scripture.
It was washed and reused. So they see this ancient
parchment
and say, you know what?
We don't need these scribbles about maths. That's not real.
I need some drafting paper here. I just want to use this one. It's old
Yeah.
enough. Nobody's going to care.
So that's a process known as palimpsesting. In 1899, it was still in the hands of the Greek church and was photographed by Johann Heiberg in Istanbul. Then what happened? In 1922, the manuscript went missing in the midst of the evacuation of the Greek Orthodox Library in the city during a tumultuous period following World War I, in which it entered a private French collection.
It always ends up with private collectors, don't they?
Yeah.
They see these. I think they see these opportunities, this chaos. Say, hey, just give me whatever relics you have.
Yeah.
But you know what? Actually, a lot of really nicely preserved things ended up coming from. At least it's in safe hands. I sometimes wonder what else is in the hand of private collectors. What treasures of humanity that we do not know of is just in some billionaire's house, sitting there waiting to be shown to the world. But okay, so it ended up in the hands of this private collector, and then what?
And then it eventually was exported and sold at an auction house in New York City.
They're profiting from it.
Yeah, in 1998.
How much?
Well, it doesn't
say?
say how much it was sold for, but the auction for it was contested by the Greek church, but eventually the US court ruled in favor of the auction, and the manuscript was purchased by an anonymous buyer, Mr. B. And some people seem to think that might have been Jeff Bezos, but...
Oh, I thought you said some people thought it was Mr. Bean.
No, Mr. B.
Yeah, okay.
Anonymous Mr. B. And it was deposited for conservation and study at the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore. And so potentially the founder and CEO of Amazon bought this and put it into conservation.
All right.
So how many hundreds, or this is like 12 or so hundred years, like 1,300 years after it
It's
was
amazing that
originally
this
written.
piece of parchment is surviving so long.
Yeah. And so it's now called the Archimedes palimpsest, referring to the washed out yet still visible text running left to right across the parchment. It contains two works of Archimedes that were thought to have been lost, the Ostomachion and the Method of Mechanical Theorems, as well as the only surviving original Greek edition of his work on floating bodies. And now it doesn't only have writing on it, but it also has a picture of Daniel the prophet surrounded by two lions. So there's these Greek mathematical writings on it. There's these two different theorems on it that are very famous.
Like a wild, ancient, really nerdy scribble.
And then they've washed it at the Greek Orthodox monastery, and they've drawn this picture over it on the other side of Daniel and two lions. And they've washed it, but they haven't washed it super well. So you can actually read various different layers of writing on this parchment. And, so
and that's understandable. It's kind of like when you're writing on paper, when you were a kid at school, and then you're using the eraser to erase, and then you can still read if you really paid attention to what came before.
Exactly.
So, wow.
Yeah, so
amazing.
they're planning on doing a number of different X-rays and different fluorescent scans to try to read what's on there. I had a quick little squiz at the picture itself, and, I've studied a bit of Greek, so I can read some of the words that are on there that are still quite visible to the naked eye. So, yeah, it's a fascinating document that has circulated the world.
Does it contain any kind of humanity-saving knowledge that
probably
has been lost?
Not necessarily, but
that's pretty cool.
Just some really interesting maths history.
Now, Archimedes is very interesting. Now, first of all, I wanted to see, do you make any spiritual applications from that whole story of this lost parchment?
Not off the top of my head. Do you?
Let me think here. I'm thinking here about the Bible. There's this one time in the times of Josiah the king where the temple in Israel was quite abandoned and left to the flies, and he decided to do something about it. And he said, "Look, let's just clean it up first. Let's just do a nice little cleanup." And in the process of this nice little cleanup, the people, the workers of the king, they found this very old scroll. It was dusty, it was full of cobwebs, and when they opened it up, it turns out to be the law of Moses, which was lost. People didn't know. People at the time of Josiah, we're talking about a few hundred years after King David. At that time, about 200 years, something like that, in the whole Israel, there was not one Bible to be found.
Wow.
And they found this one, and then they read it, and then when the king read it, he was like crying. He's like, man, like
Didn't he tear his clothes?
Yeah, like we're breaking like every other law here in this department. We need to do something about it. So
Need a revival.
He revived. He read it to the people. Everybody was like, oh wow, really? This is all that God has said. Like I had no idea. I mean, we carried like knowledge that our parents instructed us from their parents and from their parents. So they had a bit of oral tradition going on. But they didn't have the exact source, and now that they found these scrolls of the copy of the laws of Moses, they were like that caused a massive revival. That's the story in the Bible that brings me up, which makes me think that in a lot of people's homes, certainly in my home growing up, there was a Bible there, all right, but it was kind of used like in the Greek monastery.
Yeah.
It was just used to kind of as a talisman, like to kind of bless the house. It was always open in Psalm 91 or Psalm 23. And, my parents believed that, it will give you good luck to have a Bible opened.
Sure.
But I never read it. And I think that so many people today, they're in a position that they know about God, they believe in God, even sometimes they go to church, but they never really read the Bible for themselves. And sometimes we need to erase these human traditions that come to us, and we need to see what's actually the original that's behind that. And when we look at the original, sometimes it's very different from what the quote-unquote good things that have been putting on. So I think that this is a parable, an illustration of, hey, just getting back to the Bible, just taking the dust off and reading the actual original, which is way more interesting and important than whatever traditions can be handed over from time to time to us.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. So there you go. I'll talk more about Archimedes, because Archimedes did something even more interesting than writing some mathematical formulas. He actually created a death heat ray. Would you like to hear more about that one?
I've heard of this one. I think Mythbusters tried to see if
To
this
recreate
worked,
that one?
and they did it with the wrong specifications, and they never got a conclusive answer.
Yeah, look, it is a very interesting story, a bit of a mythical story,
Yeah.
but that will lead us into the new segment of the California company using a similar technology to make sure that nighttime will never exist again, at least in some parts of the world.
Here I am, struggling to get to sleep, and they're wanting to keep the sun up all day long.
You wait until I tell this story. That's going to be a great one.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
All right, it's now time for a quiz answer. But before the quiz answer and the quiz question, Tish, actually just the answer, right? We have
just the answer.
Yeah, before the quiz answer, I just wanted to repeat our giveaway. We have a Bible study guide on relationships, particularly if you're finding that some of your relationships are straining a little bit. It may not be because of anything else, but other than you haven't really been taught the right communication skills. When you have a Bible study with some top communication skills from the Bible that are proven and tested by time, proven and tested by God, I would say, and you can learn more about that, and that can really help to improve your life, perhaps in the biggest way it can improve. Because when our relationships are not right, Lindsay, everything else starts to fall through the cracks, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you'd like to have that Bible study, text me here, #relationships, #relationship to 0491 064 669. Again, one more time, the number is 0491 064 669. Now let's get the answer to the quiz question. Please, producer Tish.
Yeah, so following the golden calf apostasy, which tribe executed the 3,000? That was the tribe of Levi. And if you want to find that in the Bible, it's in Exodus 32, verses 28.
Yes, the tribe of Levi. And that actually was what left them to get back into God's favor, so to speak. And because of that, God says, after that event, before that, each firstborn of each tribe could actually be a priest and work in the sanctuary. But now, only the Levites will have that privilege of being temple workers.
That's interesting.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so I want to talk about Archimedes. So Archimedes, these like ancient mathematician, physician, philosopher, because you're kind of, back in the days you were a little bit of everything.
Sure, yeah.
And
Doctor of all the things.
That's right, doctor of all things. He has a story that goes beyond mathematics. Actually, he was also interested in military craft. he created this solar furnace, or also people call it the heat ray, and he tried to use it during an attack by Roman ships during the siege of Syracuse in between 213 and 212 BC. Now, Archimedes died in that battle, but basically what he had this massive, giant concave mirror that was supposed to collect the light from the sun. He pointed at the Roman wooden ships, and the ships would catch on fire. It's kind of like the idea of, have you ever played when you were a kid, to get like a magnifying glass? Yeah, look, not perhaps the ants, but or leaves or something, just to create a bit of, a smoke or even fire. Have you done that before?
I think I did probably as a kid.
Yeah, I totally
I've certainly seen it as a kid, like on TV or something.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally did it.
Somehow part of my childhood memories, one way or another.
I felt bad for the ants. I don't remember actually ever burning an ant. However, I did burn lots of leaves. And so I know that it does work. And this is what Archimedes tried to do. Mm-hmm. Do you think he managed to burn down the Roman ships?
Why not?
Look, nobody knows. Probably not.
Actually, can I tell you just briefly?
Yeah.
So I stumbled across this on Instagram a few months ago. I think some guy got like an old TV screen, just the screen of it, and he's used that as a death ray with the sun, and he like puts rocks where the focal point goes.
Oh yeah, there's a YouTube channel from this guy. This is actually very impressive.
It's so cool. It just turns rocks into lava.
He turns rocks into lava. He has like I think his one's called the death ray or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is legit.
Yeah. And it's made up of a very similar sort of process. It's not, it's
just
not
a massive lens.
Yeah, it's a massive lens. And it's like pulling the sun's rays into one spot, whereas Archimedes' heat ray was like bouncing it off like a mirror, like a circular mirror into a point far away.
So that idea is not new,
of
using the solar ray and pairing it with mirrors to do different things.
Particularly if he used, was it bronze?
I think it doesn't work. I think it didn't work at all. And I'll tell you why. Because the Germans in World War II had the same idea.
Okay.
And then later on the Soviets, they had these ideas of launching these mirrors, the satellite mirrors, into space to create these death rays that would be able to set military bases on fire. The problem with that is that it never worked. And you know why?
Why?
Because of the focal point. So, for example, imagine that experiment with your magnifier.
Yeah.
You have to be at a certain exact distance for it to work. If you're too far away, what happens? You just create a big reflection of the sun.
Sure.
But it's not concentrated enough. So it has a sweet spot.
It does have a sweet spot, and the concave part of the lens, or
convex, I don't know. No, it's one of these.
It needs to be at a specific angle of like the circular face of it for it to hit at a certain distance specifically away from it.
So it turned out it never really worked for military purposes, even though the Germans tried during World War II. They had that idea. The Soviets tried. But then the Soviets tried, look, we perhaps cannot use it as a gun, but maybe we can use it for agriculture. Mm-hmm. So we can create some really bright spots and then either heat up some areas or, just create like an agricultural boom so that plants can receive more sunlight, like in Siberia, in places that they don't really receive. So the Russians came up with this satellite called Znamia in 1993, but it didn't really work. It was not that bright. And so they kind of abandoned it because it was very expensive. But now this idea is being resurrected by a company in California named Reflect Orbital. And they are working actively to launch a constellation of satellites equipped with massive reflective mirrors into space to beam sunlight to Earth, but particularly to boost solar farm efficiency after sunset. So what you do is you have an app. They develop an app. You put you see the map in the app. You put on your geographical coordinates, and you just click. You pay the price, and then these satellites will turn and they will start reflecting the sun's light into that spot at night. So, for example, Lindsay, if you're throwing a nice big party and you want to impress your friends, you can hire their service. You pay a fee. And if you're throwing a party in your apartment at night, you can just have the sun shining on your house and nowhere else in the world.
Wow.
And some of these technologies, they are trying to get something that is like about 50 times brighter than the moon.
Okay.
So, however, even though that sounds really cool, the number one application for that is to generate electricity
Sure.
at nighttime.
Like sunlight. At night.
So basically, solar farms, you can divert the energy of the sun, the light of the sun, to the solar farms so that the solar farms can be generating sun-powered energy during the night. And that would help to drive costs down for a lot of things because solar energy is one of the most efficient ways that we know how to get energy from the sun.
I really don't like this. You know why?
No, why?
Because God has created our world and nature to work in specific rhythms. And if we're messing with that, it's actually going to mess with the type of food that is produced and how that impacts our bodies when we eat that. Like it's at a cellular microscopic level, it's going to impact everything that it comes in contact with down the line. So I wouldn't want to eat food that comes off a farm that's been using this solar thing because it's, forcing these plants to grow continuously without resting at night when we've done studies that show that if you inject trees with a certain growth hormone, like ancient redwood trees that have been growing for thousands of years, those trees that have been injected with that growth hormone that don't get a chance to rest over winter, they die because they don't have that dormancy period. I don't think it's wise to be making plants grow all day, every day, and night as well.
Yeah, look, I will kind of disagree with you here because, number one, I would probably eat it. I would have no problem. It's just like sunlight. That being said, yes, sure, the plants need a resting period. I can agree with that. However, we're talking about generating more electric energy, particularly at a time where our energy expenditure is going through the roofs. We need more energy, and solar energy is the cleanest, more abundant, cheapest one. So you're not going to be eating electric energy, but you need energy to power up your air conditioning at night. Imagine if you could do that for free.
How's it going to impact people's circadian rhythm if they're in that area?
Look, it is very targeted. So it's going to be just into small spots. So if you're not in that immediate spot, it's going to be pitch dark as per normal. It's not going to impact. However, some people are having these kind of preoccupations, particularly for animals and these concerns of the natural day-night cycle. I think it depends on how people will be using it, to be honest. If people are generating this, but it's so targeted, and it's so targeted to, like, for example, let's say I have solar panels in my home. And let's say that I hire that service so that I can be generating, let's say that the cost is so low, it's cheap, that I go to bed at night, I close all of my curtains, and then there's like this sun ray dropping into my my ceiling just to generate more electricity for me for a very, very low cost. I'll totally do it if the price is right. Yeah, I mean, it's not as bright as the sun. Okay. It's definitely less bright than the sun. But there we go. They actually they aim to have a constellations of 4,000 satellites in low Earth orbit by 2030. This year, they want to launch their first test satellite, and they already got all of the approvals from, or they have a bunch of approvals already. Not all of them, but they already started their approval process with the FCC in the United States, which approves that. So they have already cleared some of these legal milestones.
Alrighty.
So maybe you can even use it as a prank. Maybe you can text it so that it can shine it in your friend's house at night and just
Don't you dare prank me like that.
I don't know. Let's see what's gonna happen. Lindsay, give me your address here. You might receive some sunlight.
You better not.
What about you, radio friend? What do you think about that company? Do you think it's good news? Do you think it's bad news? Do you think it's good technology, or are you concerned with some of the side effects? Let us know here. 0491 064 669. How would you use it? Do you have any creative usage for that one? Let us know too. 0491 064 669. Again, there's, imagine if you can just tap a button and you can have the sunlight whenever you need, wherever you are, even at nighttime. That's what this company is promising to do, which reminds me a little bit of the battle in the valley of Aishalon in the Bible, where Joshua prayed and God let the sun stay still
for like an extra day almost.
For an extra day so that they can continue the battle. That's the kind of a technology that we are building now. We are going to be able to kind of recreate some of these historical miracles in the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not selling me.
Okay.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
We have Sam Bonello on the line with us. He's a financial educator, and he's going to be helping us to understand a little bit more about the current impacts of the rise in global oil prices for the everyday Australian budget. Good morning to you, Sam. It's great to have you with us.
Good morning.
All right, Sam, have you been, fueling your vehicle lately, or are you into electric cars and you're not being affected by this crisis at all?
No, unfortunately, I've entertained the idea of an electric car previously, but it's back on the radar this week. But my bigger issue is I've actually got a trucking business now. And so
wow, okay.
Our diesel bills are $400 a day and now $500 a day.
$400 a day and move to $500 a day. Wow, that is a significant
And we have a little
increase.
truck. We have a little truck. The big trucks that people see on the highway that are moving their lettuce and their, coffee pods and all the things that we use every day, their prices would be, or their volumes are even higher, much higher.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Sam, tell us a little bit about the impact. Like, how much dependent on petrol are we, like, on average? Like, ordinary people. Let's not talk about businesses yet, because as you're saying, some businesses, they are very heavily impacted and dependent on oil prices, aren't they? Yeah.
So, look, the answer is very. Even if we're not a business that's, say, a trucking company that obviously has to fill up large tanks every day, all of the food that we eat, all of the things that we purchase, whether it's a necessity or a, discretionary spend on a new appliance, everything gets transported. And especially here in Australia, there's very little rail transport and there's very little local manufacturing. So the ships that bring stuff from overseas, the trucks that take it from the port to the grocery store, and then, of course, our fuel tank or the courier's fuel tank to get it from the stores where we purchase it to our door, we're all burning, fossil fuels at every stage of that process. So with the global oil price increasing, significantly, every single one of the people in that supply chain have either got to absorb that cost or pass that along. And the other part of it is it's not just transport of finished goods, but in the case of foodstuffs and fibre, farmers who are in regional areas where these price effect on fuel is even higher because the cost of transporting the fuel out to, the outback or inland Australia where things are grown for us, their costs go up. The other thing with food is urea, which is a very common fertiliser. For better or worse, is a petroleum-based fertiliser, and that cost goes up. So all the way through the supply chain of things that we use every day, people are having to use fossil fuels to produce that, to transport that and get it to us. And they either pass that cost along or they absorb it. And I heard just the other day that like trucking companies are running on about a 3% profit margin. So there's not really any room for them to absorb an increase in fuel prices. So they're going to pass that on very quickly, and that's where we'll feel it.
So there's basically almost nothing we can think of that is not impacted by fuel prices. So what does that represent to the average Australian household? How much more money are we going to be spending?
We don't know yet because it depends how long this lasts. There'll be a time lag in food and, delivery costs and whatnot. It'll be a bit of time before we really see that and sense that. But I just did the numbers before, Ford Ranger is a common car. They've got a 70-litre tank of fuel. Mm-hmm. If you were using a tank of fuel a week, you're now paying, $50 to $60 more to fill that vehicle.
Wow.
The only ones that really aren't affected in the short term, Joseph, are smart people that have got an e-vehicle.
All right. Well, but even then,
do you know any of those?
You're saying, look up. Yeah, I happen to do know because I own like an electric vehicle, so
Stop bragging.
Feeling a little bit richer or less poor. But at the same time, I think, but everything else is getting expensive. So, because yes, direct buying of fuel is one item in the list. But as you mentioned, everything gets that because, our trucks that are transporting things, they are not electric. They're not solar powered. So it's going to affect everybody's budgets.
The tractors that are being used to
That's
grow
right.
food.
So it's only, perhaps saving that, $50 or $60 a week at the moment. Is anything we can do to minimize this impact, or really just to out of embrace it and there's nothing much we can do?
Look, I mean, you could go all the way to growing your own veggies, so you're not paying someone else's transport and fertilizer costs. But for busy families, most of us in Australia live in urban and cities. There's not a whole lot. So when it comes to managing the impact of price rises that are really out of our control, the lever that we have to pull is where do we spend and what do we spend on. So, if your tank of fuel is costing $60 extra, well, that might be the cafe on a Sunday where there is a 10% surcharge, and that evens out the budget. If people are blessed to be in the position where they have discretionary spending, my perspective is we have an extremely good quality of living here in Australia, and people enjoy a lot of non-essentials. Mm-hmm. If you're blessed to be in that category, which many of us are, it's fairly easy to trim the budget. Where it really is going to hurt is where people don't have a lot of discretionary spending that they can trim, and they've got a long commute to work, and that $50, $60 extra or whatever it might be for them has to come out of, an essential
something
spending
essential.
Piece.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I guess one option with urban environments is if the public transport's reliable where you are, buy a book and sit on the train instead of sitting in traffic.
Yes.
But yeah, everyone's situation's different, Joseph. Kids have got sport, kids have got after school activities, all of that sort of stuff. It's not that easy to just cut things out.
Yeah. What I wanted to know from our listeners, Sam, is that how is this effect in oil prices impacting your budget? Are you already thinking about not doing something? I'm thinking I'm going to have to eat less and less outside, and I have to just start preparing more of my meals at home as one way that I can use to save my budgets a little bit. But what other ways is this impacting you? Let us know here, 0491 064 669. How is that impacting you? Are you going to have to go without something? Or you're not planning to make any changes? Let us know here. We're going to, if you send the message in the next 2 minutes, we can even relay them on to Sam, and he can comment them on air. Sam, we also have been seeing that the RBA is, talking about inflation rising up, hiking up to 5%. I have seen news talking about that if prices don't go down, and Iran has promised that they're going to keep disrupting the oil traffic in the Hormuz Strait. Just yesterday, 5 ships were attacked. They were trying to break that blockade. There are now reports that they are also launching maritime sea mines, which are very, very difficult to remove. And if the prices goes to $200 per barrel, which is a definite possibility, some analysts are even considering that Australia can get into a recession. Now, I don't think that we have experienced a recession in many decades. So what do we do if that happens? Now, interest rates are hiking up. There's less and less activity in the economy. People are just not wanting to buy, as you mentioned, the non-essential so much. They have to limit those. What do you do in the times in periods of recession? How can we still get ahead financially in those times, or just have to brace until things go beautiful again?
Look, I would share just a technical definition of a recession is not as scary as what I think many people think of when they hear that word. Mm-hmm. I think the word association recession, they swap the R for a D and they think depression. Mm-hmm. A recession is just 2 quarters, so 2 3-month periods of negative economic growth. So if it wasn't announced on the news, most people wouldn't even know we've had recession.
Okay.
So it's it's a concern over the long term, but if there's 2 quarters of short-term period, 2 quarters of negative growth, it's not the end of the world. I think in some ways, Joseph, it might be a two-edged sword in that if people feel that, that wealth effect where we feel poor because, prices are going up, we notice it at the pump, we notice it at the grocery store, and we start spending less on the on the discretionary things. Australia's had an amazing ability to keep on spending even with these economic headwinds, and that's part of what drives inflation. The other part is obviously the government creating enough new jobs to fill the MCG. So there's a lot of wages tied up in there, and they've got to get that money from somewhere. So we're not in control of that one. I saw a illustration yesterday. The number of government jobs that have been created in the last 4 years is so large that all those new employees would not fit into some of our biggest sporting stadiums.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
So every week, wages are being paid to support that number of people. And obviously that money has to come from somewhere, and that contributes significantly to inflation.
I see.
Yeah.
So the blessing in disguise might be that as we all feel poor, we stop spending, and that slows down, the economy a little bit, and inflation would follow. But just clarify the question for me again, Joseph.
Yeah, so the question is can we let's say that businesses are starting to do poorly. We have to kind of really tighten our seat belts, our belts to spend less with the discretionary expenses. Are we still able to get ahead financially, or is that going to also chew into our savings? What would be your tips so that we can still save money and look after our future? And let's say, what would be your top tips? Let's say that someone said, look, I want to save $5,000 or $10,000 this year. What would be the principles or your top tips for that?
So I think two categories of people, so that I'm not being insensitive here to those that don't have any discretionary spending. Those without any discretionary spending that are really living paycheck to paycheck, and there's nothing else they can cut. It's what can you do to increase your income? Is it a second job? Is it, staying up late at night and doing a TAFE course or some sort of course that increases your earning potential? There's always a lever that you can pull, but increasing your income is a much harder lever to pull than decreasing your spending. So for people that do have discretionary spending, it's just print out your bank balance for the last month or the last 3 months and just go through it line by line, asking the question, did I need to do that? Mm-hmm. Is there something else I could have done with the kids on a Sunday and made memories that didn't cost me, $200 to go to the animal park with everyone, or $100 to go and eat out on Saturday night because we felt lazy and we didn't want to cook, Going through that, obviously there's things that people can sell oftentimes. One of the good things is people still like to buy. That's a bit of an addictive process. And so things like Marketplace, Gumtree, etc., the classifieds, they can actually do well because people are looking for things at a cheaper price. And so if you've got stuff that's laying around the house, stow it in the garage, you haven't touched it for years, now's a good time to start selling it, and you can use the proceeds from that to put towards your war chest. But it requires focus, it requires a bit of energy, and really starting with knowing what your expenses are, Joseph.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip. By the way, Sam and I, we recorded a series of podcasts that talk about the essentials that you need to do, all the things that your school, your parents should have taught you, but they couldn't because they didn't know or they didn't have the time. Sam and I do these, have this podcast. It's called the 2 Cents Podcast. We have 5 or 6 episodes and they are up online. If you would like the link to that one, you can text us here, #2cents, and we'll send you the link, or you can just Google online. You can go to the Apple Podcasts store and you can look for 2 Cents Podcast with Sam Bonello and Joseph Skafy. You'll find it there. I think a lot of people, actually we got messages from people from all over the globe, haven't we, Sam? That were thanking, this podcast for what it has done for them. So even though we created it for an Australian perspective, for an Australian public, I think we have had listeners from Saudi Arabia, from America, from Africa, from all kinds of interesting places.
Joseph, I'll just add a point. I'm not sure how we're going for time.
Yeah,
just before
we have more
out.
time.
I would say this, this is Faith FM. A lot of our listeners are either believers in Jesus or exploring that avenue. I would encourage people not to miss this opportunity to grow your faith. The headlines are, a little daunting at the moment, a little concerning, both geopolitically but also budgetarily. It can be easy for us to fall into fear, doubt. Just think of those passages, Jesus says that not a sparrow falls without him knowing about it, and that the grass withers and the fields are dressed in flowers and they don't toil or spin. The Lord provides for them. The Lord also provides for us. And during these times where all these headlines are negative and concerning financially, it can be really tempting to modify our giving. Or we say, if we stop returning tithe, there's an extra 10% in the budget. Maybe that'll cover the fuel increase. Please don't be tempted to do that, because you lose a more valuable opportunity to grow your faith. And living in the end times, as I believe we are, growing our faith is an essential thing. And it's not always reading more and praying more. It's experiencing the Lord's provision, trusting the Lord more, so that you've got that living relationship and that memory bank of how the Lord worked in your behalf. So don't miss this opportunity to grow your faith. Don't cower in fear and start reducing your giving through tithe and offering. Be faithful, be generous, because ultimately God is our provider, not, the fuel pump or the government or anybody else in the economic system.
That's really well said. And I'm also a big believer, Sam, that God teaches so much about faith in that arena of money. We actually had a message here from Suzanne. Suzanne said, our church runs a free community meal, cheap pantry, and free vegetables, bread, etc. We have had our highest numbers of people coming through the door last night. I expect more people will be accessing these kinds of services over the coming weeks. We're also running cooking demonstrations and dinner based on cooking on a budget. And we are hoping to assist our community through this time. What do you think about these kinds of initiatives, Sam?
I think they're fantastic. I think they're a little challenging, the food banks. A lot of people, are working 9 to 5, which is the time that those food banks are open. But certainly, batch cooking, spending some time on a Sunday where you plan your budget and you have a few meals that you can make out of the one, set of cheaper ingredients. All of those things, yeah, absolutely. Money saved is better than money earned, because you don't have to pay tax on it. But you've still got to work for it. You've got to spend some time and plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, thank you very much. And look, we are approaching the end of our interview here. And you mentioned, you gave us some really wise words. One question here, just very, very briefly, if you can ask. So why do we need to pay more for petrol in Australia or in other countries globally if this crisis is only affecting, let's say, a certain specific part of the world? Why oil prices all over the globe increase when the Hormuz Strait is closed? Can you give us just like a 30-second or a 40-second answer to that one?
Yeah, I'm not an energy supply chain expert by any means, but I have been curious about the same thing and I've done some reading. So the stats are about 20% of global oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz, which is a lot of oil out of the Gulf states. Some of that oil, the oil out of Iran, has been sanctioned by a lot of Western countries, and so the big buyer of that has been China. However, if that oil stops flowing, and I think Iran's contribution is about 3 to 4% of global oil supply, and the rest of the oil that comes through the Straits of Hormuz is from countries, Gulf states. So the thing is, though, if China can't get it from Iran, they're going to go to the larger market and bid for that oil. Even though our oil didn't come from that part of the world or from Iran, people are now trying to buy out of the same pool from which our oil did come.
All right.
And
if the prices are
really,
right. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, you're saying, so if the prices are right, basically people from any country can supply that same oil to China, so prices go up for everyone. Yeah.
The oil from different regions of the world is not quarantined. It's essentially all in a big common pool, and it's supply-demand economics, and oil companies, their mandate is to make money for investors. And if they can sell a barrel of oil for more than than what they could last week, they're going to do that.
That makes sense. Thank you so much, Sam Bonello, for your interview today. We're looking forward to talk to you again. All the best.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.